is where MAGA comes to talk, and we're going to jump right into it because we have a lot to cover. Welcome to the program, everyone. My name is Brian Craig. This is where MAGA comes to talk. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe if you're new. I will talk about the events of today, these god-awful events. We're going to get into that in just a little bit. And, of course, it's a tragedy, and everyone lost is in our prayers. No doubt about it. Just another terrible instance, and we will get into it, and I'll be talking about it more tomorrow, too, because there'll be more developments. But I will talk about it on the program here in just a bit. And also, your calls are welcome at 1-888-465-2631, 888-465-2631. And it's a toll-free call no matter where you are tuned in from. I do have a lot to cover, and I actually want to start with what's going on in Washington, D.C., because there's just a terrible thing has happened in D.C. And President Trump is doing something that no one thought could be done, right? They said it couldn't be done, right? Remember? They said it can't be done. Know what that's from? Anyone know what that's from? He's doing what they said couldn't be done. And he's ridding blue cities of crime. And he started with the nation's capital, which is a federal city, Washington, D.C. And I remember the first time I went to Washington, D.C., a long, long time ago when I was young, I couldn't believe the condition of it and the homeless people around. And that was over 30 years ago. It was creepy, but it was also embarrassing. I've been to Washington many times over the years, and I remember there was one time I drove to Washington, and I was on I-95, and I got lost on I-95 on the Beltway. And I was going around, and so I couldn't figure out where I was. It was the daytime. I didn't know where I was. And I got off of I-95. And I was in a residential neighborhood, which was not nice, and I saw some guys, a group of guys sitting on a car, and I pulled up, got out of the car, and this was so long ago, we didn't have the internet yet and all that stuff, and I asked them for directions, and I think I escaped without being mugged, without being robbed or harassed or anything, because they thought I was nuts to get out of my car in this neighborhood and ask someone for directions and everything. But it was kind of like that scene in National Lampoon's Vacation with Chevy Chase. Remember that when I got all the tires stolen? It was kind of like that. And I couldn't believe. And the other times I've been up there, not only was it run down and creepy and scary, but it's also a national embarrassment. The two, all American cities are important, but the two most prominent cities are Washington, D.C. and New York City, because these are the cities where so many world leaders and corporate people and people from around the world visit on commerce. And when they go to our city, whether it's the nation's capital or Chicago or New York, they go to these big cities, what they see and experience when they go back home, that's America to them. Someone in the chat room, I see a couple people, they wrote FDT. That's some new MAGA people. That, of course, means Forever Donald Trump. That's awesome. Forever Donald Trump. So welcome, our new MAGA people. FDT, Forever Donald Trump. That's awesome. That's a new MAGA phrase, right? Like deplorables and all that stuff. FDT, Forever Donald Trump. But it's an embarrassment to our country when these cities are in those conditions. The other thing is, no American should have to be in fear of walking out on the streets of their town and have a fear of being robbed, mugged, or somehow become a victim of some type of crime or violence. And, you know, there's the way that it works in this country, and this is a sad thing. If you're in lower income neighborhoods, whether they're white or minority neighborhoods, because there are poor white neighborhoods, believe it or not. But if you go to a low income neighborhood, regardless of skin color, religious background, or anything, people are treated differently by the local government and local law enforcement. That's just the way it is. The nicer neighborhood you live in, the more respect you get from your local government. And when I say local government, I'm talking about not just the police, but local officials, state officials, and everything else. I've seen this. I've had this experience myself. When I was growing up, my parents lived in a nice neighborhood, but when I moved out on my own, I lived in a not so nice neighborhood because I was out on my own and didn't make a lot of money. And I noticed right away I was treated. I've told stories about where I've had run-ins with someone tried to break into my house while I was home. It took the police 2.5 hours or more to respond. I get married, I move into a nice neighborhood. I call the police. They're at the door before I can hang up the phone. Right? You've heard me tell the story about the kid that got the bicycle stolen across the street from my house. I called the police on a stolen bicycle, mind you. 5 police cruisers responded. I got a home invasion in a low-income neighborhood when I first moved out on my own in my dumpy first apartment. 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 45 minutes when there's a home invasion trying to take place while I'm home to get a response. So you get treated different if you're in a nicer neighborhood as opposed to a lower income neighborhood by local governments. Now, I will say that city that I lived in where it took 2 hours and 45 minutes for a police response, that was a Democrat town, Fort Lauderdale. And Democrats treat people that don't have as much money differently because Democrats are corrupt. Look at all these Democrats that are involved in all these mortgage scams that are going on, right? The Fed person, Letitia, Adam Schiff and such. They're crooks and they just care about rich people, Democrats. And that's the way it is. When I was in college, there was a book. You know, you guys I have a degree in history, I have the double major in education, and there was a book that I had to read in one of my education courses in college. It was called Savage Inequalities. I can't remember the name of the author. Look it up. It'll make you physically. It's called Savage Inequalities, and it's about schools in low-income areas. It's been a long time, but I think it was Louisiana is where they were talking about it in the beginning. And they go into these low-income neighborhoods and look at the school. It's called Savage Inequalities. Look, I'm sure the book is around. It's a very well-known book. And you go into these low-income neighborhoods, and the schools are not the same quality as schools in a nice neighborhood. You know, I went to an inner-city school in South Florida. It was a frightening dump, okay? You know, where I live now, my daughter grew up in the house where I live now. The high school my daughter went to is like a private. It's a public school, but it's like that private school that all the rich kids in D.C. go to. That day school, I forgot what it's called. You know what I'm talking about? Or even like a private college, but it was a public high school. Because when the point of all this and how it relates to what's going on in Washington and Chicago and Minneapolis and all these other places. When you're in an area that has people that have some kind of, I hate to say money because I'm not rich, but when you live in an upper middle class neighborhood or a wealthy neighborhood, you get treated with much more respect by the system than if you live in the ghetto or if you're some poor white person living in some rundown trailer park somewhere. That's just the reality of it. And Democrats are all into classism. You know, this whole thing of middle class, working class, upper middle class, upper class, all that stuff. That's Marx. That's Karl Marx stuff. That's liberal stuff. It's become part of the way we talk and think, but that's the way. But all that comes from liberalism, classism. And Democrats, and this is the reality of it, I'm here to tell you. Democrats believe that poor people don't deserve to live in crime-free zones and they don't care about them because they don't donate to them. They don't financially support them or their campaign. So they don't care about poor people. Now, they go around acting as if they care about poor people. But, you know, when I was growing up, you know, I had a grandfather who was a union guy back in the 30s, in the 20s and in the 30s. My grandfather had my mother when he was in his 50s, right? My grandfather was 52 when my mom was born. So, you know, so he was a union guy in the 20s and the 30s. So he was a hardcore leftist union guy, Woodrow Wilson Democrat, okay? I mean, he was, because he was old. He was born in 1899. FDR Democrat too. And I remember he would tell me, he's like, you know, the Republicans care about the rich people and the big business, and the Democrats are about the common man. Well, that's a bunch of BS. It's actually the opposite is true. I mean, look, there are three leading Democrat socialists right now: Bernie Sanders, AOC, and Zohan Mamdani in New York. What do all three of them have in common? It's not religion. It's not ethnicity. Bernie Sanders, these are all three Democrat socialists. Bernie Sanders, this would be a good Jeopardy question. AOC and Zohan Mamdani. What do the three of them have in common? All three of them are multimillionaires. But they're out there talking about socialism and redistribution of wealth. I promise you, all three of them, okay, take all of the Trump tax cuts. I promise you, they all take the Trump tax cuts. And they're all millionaires, some of them richer than others, okay? But that's the way of it. Hold on one second. I gotta send a text to my wife. Hold on. I'm just texting my wife. Okay. I could yell it to her, but I text her because you guys don't need to hear. I had to ask her to do something. But that's the way it is. This idea of democratic socialism and that the Democrats care about poor people is a lie. They're the party of the rich. And the Republican Party, now it's a MAGA Republican Party led by Donald Trump. But the Republican Party is the party of the common man, not of big business, but of small business, okay? And the Democrat Party is the party of the uber rich. Adam Schiff, with his mortgage fraud thing that he's up against. You know, when he's the senator now, but when he was in the House of Representatives, he was for Beverly Hills. The Beverly Hills crowd were his people, okay? So these people in Washington, D.C. or Chicago, in these low-income, high-crime neighborhoods, as far as the Democrats are concerned, so what? They don't give us money, and they get what they deserve. They don't care because they're poor. And that is the way of it. Don't let anyone tell you any different. And I mean, and look at what they say. They say, oh well, even though the statistics aren't, we know that the books of the crime stats in New York City are lies. We know this, right? I mean, you know, but what do they say? They take their phone and, oh, well, look, crime's down. Crime's down. Well, we know that's not true, but down's not enough. The goal is 0% crime. You know, in my neighborhood, I keep track of the crime in my neighborhood. You know, you got all these things online. You can look at crimes in your neighborhoods, police report, there's websites, you can do all this stuff. And I live in a pretty much zero crime area. Every once in a while, somebody will find something missing out of their car. Who knows? Did they lose it? Did the kids take it, or was it broken into? I don't know. But when there's a crime like that, okay, like when someone gets something stolen from their car, in my neighborhood, you know what happens? And when I'm talking about something stolen, I'm talking about something minor. Because what do people leave in their cars these days? Not too much, right? You take your phone with you everywhere, right? Your computer's with you everywhere. There's not much in the car. But if somebody goes out to their car in my neighborhood and something's gone missing, what do you think happens? What do you think happens? I'll tell you what happens. The person takes their doorbell camera footage and they put it on the Nextdoor app. And they'll have the people that went into their car on the video and say, hey, these people, sometimes it's teenagers, These people went into my car, broke into my car last night and stole whatever they stole. If you know who they are, send me a DM. And and then they call the police and they say, hey, look, somebody on the Nextdoor app identified them and this is who they are. All right? That's what happens in my neighborhood when there's even a little thing like somebody going in. And that doesn't even happen very often. In Washington, D.C., they are going through, and I got a story that I'm going to share with you in a minute about something that happened in Washington, D.C. that just dropped today, and it's disgusting what happened, okay? But in Washington, D.C., what are the Democrats and all of them saying? Well, crime's down. So the people that live in Washington, D.C., they are supposed to be victimized to a certain level. There's a certain level of violent crime that they should accept because they're poor, they live in the inner city, and these Washington elitists do not care about them because they're poor, or they're this or they're that, but they're not donors, so they don't care. See, the left are into classism. That's one of the reasons they don't like President Trump, because President Trump is not up to their level. And you may say, well, he's a billionaire many times over. He's richer than them. It's not about money. It's about being part of this this class of the blue bloods and the ruling elite that they're a part of. And Donald Trump, who was born wealthy because his family, had the Trump Organization in Queens, and he was a millionaire and turned himself into a billionaire. He moved into Manhattan, but he was a donor. And when you're in the donor class, they don't like you. When you're a donor, they don't like, now they'll do what you want and what you say because you pay them. They're corrupt Democrats. But you're not at their level. In fact, they despise you, and you're never supposed to make it into their club. And now he made it into the club, and he's the leader of the club, and they'll never respect him because of that. I'm going to take a break now. If you're on hold, stand by. If you'd like to call in and you're watching live on YouTube, you can do that. The number is pinned in the live stream. The Brian Craig Show podcast is on all podcast platforms. If there's a podcast platform out there, I'm on it. Just search for The Brian Craig Show. And if you follow me on my YouTube channel, Brian Craig Show on YouTube, you can catch the podcast live. And when I'm live, and you watch it on YouTube, you can call me on the program. Whether you agree or disagree with what I'm saying, the number is pinned in the live chat, 888-465-2631. My name's Brian. We're going to take our first break. Don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back with your calls and much more after this. All right, welcome back, everyone. My name's Brian. This is the Brian Craig Show podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I want to ask you this. Are you in pain? Well, if you are, that means you haven't taken my advice yet and taken advantage of the incredible laser wave pain treatment of Dr. Appleton. You know, his laser wave pain treatment works on every type of pain I have ever heard of. He's rid me of pain 7 times. I'm going to go through a list. This is a very incomplete list, okay? But these are some of the most common pains that people go in to see Dr. Appleton for. By the way, on this list is not car. If you've been in a car accident and you're in pain, whether you were a driver or a passenger, whether you were in a ride share, you know, Uber or Lyft, and you're in pain from a car accident, the pains related to a car accident can be treated with Dr. Appleton's laser wave pain treatment as well. Arthritis and bursitis, work and sports injuries, strains and sprains, repetitive motion injuries, post-surgical swelling, neck and back injuries, knee pains. He rid me of knee pain. Tinnitus, sciatica, spinal stenosis, fibromyalgia, plantar fasciitis, which I understand is a god-awful pain to have, rotary tears, herniated disc, acute pain, chronic pain, and the list goes on. He's rid me of arthritis, my knee pain from an injury in a car accident, my shoulders I've injured several times from falling off of skateboards and stuff. The laser treatment works. It's 100% painless. There's no drugs, no injections, no downtime, no appointment needed. Walk-ins are welcome even on Saturdays. But even though appointments are not needed and walk-ins are welcome, you can make an appointment. And if you're coming from out of town or out of state, which many of you have, you might want to make an appointment. Give Dr. Appleton a call and say bye-bye to your pain too, like I've done 7 times. 954-973-0710. 954-973-0710. And online, AppletonChiro.com. Okay, so Washington, D.C. I saw this story today, and this just really burned me. Now, last week, there was this very strange guy who we found out worked for the Justice Department, an attorney. He was screaming in the face of federal agents, and he took a Subway footlong and he threw it at the chest very hard of a federal agent, which is assault on a federal officer. The feds chased him down the street and arrested him. And we found out the next day that he worked for the Justice Department and was an attorney for the Justice Department. Look at this. Unbelievable. New York Times. Prosecutors failed to secure indictment against man who threw sandwich at federal agent. I'm not kidding. Federal prosecutors on Tuesday, it's yesterday, were unable to persuade a grand jury to approve a felony indictment against a man who threw a sandwich at a federal agent on the streets of Washington this month, according to 2 people familiar with the matter. Remember, grand juries are secret, so this leaked out. I have heard my entire life that you can indict a ham sandwich in a grand jury. This guy took a sandwich and threw it at a Fed, and they couldn't get an indictment? The grand jury's rejection of the felony charge was a remarkable failure by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington. That's Judge Jogn. And the second time in recent days that a majority of grand jurors refused to vote to indict a person accused of felony assault on a federal agent. It also amounted to a sharp rebuke by a panel of ordinary citizens against the prosecutors assigned to bring charges against people arrested after President Trump's deployment of the National Guard troops and federal agents to fight crime in the city streets. This is the New York Times. I am in shock about this. How could a grand jury not indict? Now, of course, the media, we had that terrible event today, so it's, that's being covered as it should. But when they get to this, they'll blame Judge Jogn and Pam Bondi. Drudge Report's already blaming Bondi. Grand juries made up from the same people that would be on a regular jury. So you have to ask yourself, who is on the grand jury in D.C.? Who's on the grand jury? Most people, when they get called for jury duty that have a life, get out of jury duty. What you have on the jury, on the grand jury, obviously are liberal activists. And I'm very curious as to how this happened and when this grand jury was impaneled. Is this a new grand jury that was just impaneled? And when the jury notices went out, did people that are liberal activists make sure that, remember that show, that movie with John Cusack? runaway jury where he was trying to get on a jury so he could manipulate the verdict. Remember that? Is the grand jury in D.C. being manipulated to go against her? I would say so. How could it, if you can indict a ham sandwich in a grand jury, and I'm not trying to make a joke, how can you not indict a guy who threw a footlong sandwich and assaulted a police officer with it? Back to the New York Times. The rejection by grand jurors was particularly noteworthy, given the attention paid to the case of the man who threw the sandwich. Video of the episode went viral on social media. Senior officials talked about the case, and the administration posted footage of a large group of heavily armed law enforcement officers going to his apartment. It remained unclear if prosecutors planned to try again to obtain an indictment. He's 37 years old, a former Justice Department paralegal. Okay, he's not an attorney, he's a paralegal. They could also forego seeking felony charges and refile the case as a misdemeanor, which does not require an indictment. I don't know what the punishment would be if that, community service. He was initially charged on August 13th in a criminal complaint, accusing him of throwing a footlong at a Customs and Border Protection officer who was on patrol with other federal agents. Before he threw the sandwich, the complaint says, he stood within inches of the officers, calling them and his colleagues fascist and shouting, "I don't want you in my city." New York Times goes on, it's extremely unusual for prosecutors to come out of a grand jury without obtaining an indictment because they are in control of the information the grand jurors hear about the case, and defendants are not allowed to have their lawyers in the room as evidence is presented. So what we have here, this is the first time I've thought of it this way with a grand jury. We have an activist grand jury is what we have. We have an activist grand jury here who let a guilty man go free because they hate Trump. Back to the New York Times. But Mr. Trump's decision to flood the streets of Washington with federal agents and military, who generally are not trained in conducting routine police stops, has resulted in a flurry of defendants being charged with federal crimes that would typically be handled at the local court level if they were filed at all. Well, the local courts, they're corrupt in D.C. It has also led to an increasing number of embarrassments for federal prosecutors who have had to dismiss weak cases or reduce charges defendants were facing in recent days. On Monday, for instance, prosecutors, these are Judge Jeanine's prosecutors, okay? On Monday, prosecutors refiled a felony assault charge as a misdemeanor in the case of a woman who was accused of injuring an FBI agent during a protest last month against immigration officials at the local jail in Washington. The charges were reduced against the woman after prosecutors failed not just once but 3 times to obtain an indictment in the case. See? We have an activist grand jury. Grand juries are secret, so we're not going to know who's on the grand jury. But whoever is on the grand jury is corrupt. These are corrupt I'd like to know, and I'm wondering, actually, Runaway Jury, was Runaway Jury the movie with John Cusack? I think it was the one with John Cusack. What was the one with Cher, where she was the lawyer on a D.C. case? Does anyone remember? If you're on hold, stand by. We'll get to some calls in a bit. But I'm wondering, are the people on the grand jury in D.C. part of the government bureaucracy, which are, of course, Democrats? See, these are Democrats. This is what I was talking about at the beginning of the program. Democrats don't care that people in Washington, D.C. are living under the siege of domestic terrorists. The domestic terrorists are the criminals. That same day, at the request of prosecutors, a federal magistrate judge dismissed all charges against a man who was arrested at a Trader Joe's last week for what police said was possession of 2 handguns. In D.C., where guns are illegal. Guy had 2 guns at the grocery store, and they dropped it. At a hearing, the magistrate judge lambasted prosecutors for having charged the man in an apparent violation of his constitutional right. What, to have guns in D.C. at the grocery store? Lawlessness cannot come from the government, the judge said. We're pushing the boundaries here. In a separate case, the judge blasted federal prosecutors and corrections officials on Tuesday, yesterday, for having allowed a woman to remain in jail for nearly 6 days after she was arrested for spitting on a National Zoo police sergeant, who are also federal officers. So they're spitting on cops, hitting things with cops, being found with guns in their possession illegally, and the D.C. grand juries and federal judges are letting them go. The woman who spit on the National Zoo police sergeant was freed. The judge pointed out in an order that she had somehow been allowed to languish behind bars even though prosecutors had not asked for her to be detained. Really, what about the J6ers that were in that jail? This is, again, because of the sad events at the school, this isn't in the news today. This is in the New York Times, but it's not being discussed or processed because of that, and I get it. But, I do hope this story gets out. What's going on with these federal judges in D.C. and also the grand jury? We have corrupt judges in D.C., both the local judges and the federal judges in D.C., and we have an out-of-control, corrupt, criminal grand jury in place in Washington, D.C. The woman who spit on the zoo cop sergeant, she's scheduled to appear next week in federal district court in Washington for a preliminary hearing where another magistrate judge will determine if there is probable cause that a crime was committed during the sandwich throwing incident. Oh, okay, this is the sub guy. The sub guy has to appear. I'm sorry, I got the cases wrong. The guy that threw the footlong at the federal agent, he's got to go in front of a federal district court for a preliminary hearing in front of a different magistrate judge next week, who will determine if there's probable cause that a crime was committed during the sandwich throwing incident. Prosecutors typically have 30 days to secure an indictment after a defendant is arrested. If they fail to do that within that window, they either have to reduce the charge to a misdemeanor or dismiss the case altogether. I mean, this is some pretty bad stuff going on. There's no getting around it. And and what's President Trump doing other than trying to make D.C. a safe place for everyone? If you're on hold, stand by. My name's Brian. We're going to take a quick break and be right back. All right, welcome back, everyone. If you're on hold, stand by. I'll go to the phones in just a moment. If you're a homeowner, a business owner, or you're with a homeowners association, listen up. You want to call Tom Laporta at Laporta Roofing. He'll give you a free evaluation of your roof. You know, he's been in business since 1988. I was still in high school. He covers both the east and west coast of Florida and everywhere in between. And he was also voted one of the best general contractors and best roofers in South Florida. I'm going to give you Tom Laporta's cell number. Give him a call or a text, 954-604-4602. 954-604-4602. That's 954-604-4602. And online, LaportaRoofing.com. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Mike from Louisiana.
Oh, hey, Mike.
You know, this whole thing with this grand jury in Washington, these grand juries in Washington, just underscores the mistake they made in raiding Mar-a-Lago. Think about this. All these favorable grand juries in Washington, you can indict a grand sandwich, but not if you're Trump and people that are enforcing Trump's rules. No.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, obviously this grand jury is corrupt. All right, let's take another call. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Ethan. I'm from California. First of all, I want to thank you for taking all these calls. I think dialogue is really important, so I appreciate that.
Okay.
So I had a question about crime. I know you've claimed that you believe that Democrats are pro-crime and the Trump MAGA party is anti-crime.
How do I feel about Epstein? I don't think about it, to answer your question.
Well, no, I'm not talking about the Epstein thing. I'm talking about Trump himself is a criminal.
No, he's not.
He has 34.
No.
He has 34 criminal counts.
That's a corrupt judge. You know, the judge, you're talking about Judge Mershon's courtroom. He's corrupt. You know, Judge Mershon's daughter is an equity partner in a company who is in the business of fundraising for Democrats. She raised $100 million on the promise of putting Trump in jail while her father was presiding over the case. And the judge in that courtroom left seats open in the courtroom gallery so that his daughter could bring clients in and watch Trump on trial. I don't know how much she got for those seats, but it was a lot. So you had a corrupt judge and a corrupt jury in that Mershon case. So while technically on the books there's some convictions there, they're fraudulent convictions. In fact, what did the judge sentence him to? You remember?
Well,
34 felony convictions. What was the sentence?
Well, I just think that
the sentence was nothing. The sentence was no jail time, and he was sentenced to 4 years as president of the United States. If these 34 felony convictions are all that and for real, why didn't he sentence him?
Well, because I think that, having the president of the United States go to jail is a bad look. I agree with you there. But I don't think that's the only thing. I mean, he's also a civilly liable.
Civilly liable. That was another corrupt case with a corrupt courtroom. Well, and the accuser, she couldn't even say what year the accusation happened or anything. She couldn't remember what year, what decade. He wasn't able to put up a defense. And her whole story was from an episode of Law & Order SVU. Google it and go watch the episode. It's on Hulu.
Yeah, but I think if you're claiming that all of these cases are corrupt, how
correct.
can you claim to support the rule of law?
I'll give you an example. In Fulton County, where they got the mugshot of President Trump, okay? It came out 2 weeks ago that Trump's second attorney general, Barr, was working with Fannie Willis and came up with the idea to charge him with on these RICO charges. So that shows you collusion from the Washington estate. Her gigolo boyfriend, Fannie Willis's gigolo boyfriend, the attorney that she paid all that money to, he had visited the White House and met with Biden's attorney and White House counsel on multiple occasions, which shows illegal collusion between the White House and Fannie Willis. All of that lawfare stuff is corrupt. Those are corrupt public officials. They should all be in jail.
Well,
and you know this. Well, you know this. This isn't news to you. You just don't care because you hate Trump.
Well,
I mean, listen. You're in this dump where you've got this psychotic governor who has California in a terrible state of pretty much everything. Economic disaster, fires that they don't do damage repair after, not having fire hydrants that have no fire in them, or any water in them, I mean. So when there's a fire, they have no water in the hydrants. So, you should be more concerned about Gavin Newsom than the great President Trump.
Well, with all due respect, in California, I live in California. I believe it's a great state. In fact, there's actually more Republicans in California than any other state besides Texas.
That's correct, because it's such a big state with a large there are more Republicans in California than there are in Florida.
Yeah, that's true. But I think I want to get back to my point.
I bet you. What's your point? That there were a bunch of corrupt judges that brought false... O.J. Simpson, California. O.J. Simpson was acquitted of murder. He killed his ex-wife and Ron Goldman. He killed him.
Yeah.
And you had a corrupt jury. That's what you have in New York.
Yeah.
That's what you've got with this grand jury in Washington. Liberals are corrupt when they're on benches or on juries.
Well, it isn't just these cases. I mean, he put 50% tariffs on Brazil for, convicting Jair Bolsonaro, who is also, he incited a coup against the state of Brazil. Mm-hmm. Trump also pardoned about 1,500 rioters for January 6th.
Well, the J6ers, many of them had their constitutional rights violated because they were not given trials. They were in prison for years without trials, which is, you are guaranteed, you have a constitutional right to a speedy trial, of which they were denied. Many of them were just basically tourists, and they got jammed up. So, the Democrat and all these cases, the J6ers and all these cases about Trump we're talking about, it's all the same people in the Democrat Party who were persecuting President Trump.
Well, you can claim these are persecutions all you want, but we all saw the videos from January 6th. We also
what did you see? We saw video of January 6th. The D.C. police now have been working very closely with the Trump White House. Tucker Carlson is an insider. And I think I have this. Hold on. Yeah, he's a top guy. He's an insider. Let me see. I had this story. Let me pull this up. Let me see if I have this on my X. I know I tweeted it, but it may be so far down on my feed. But but give me a second here. See if I can pull it up real quick. Because if not, I'll paraphrase it. But I'd rather read you exactly.
It's all good. It's all good.
I'd rather read to you exactly what Tucker said. Here it is. Okay. And Benny Johnson tweeted this. Back in July. This is back in July 2023, okay? Tucker Carlson says the chief of police at the Capitol told him personally that the crowd on January 6th was filled with federal agents. And you know better than the chief of the Capitol Police?
Well, Tucker Carlson has proved himself to be not truthful. He was fired from Fox News for lying.
No, he wasn't fired. What did he lie about?
Well, he lied about the Dominion lawsuit.
No, he was fired. He was fired because of what you brought up, J6. The Congress, the Speaker of the House gave Tucker Carlson and his team at Fox News Channel all of the J6 surveillance tapes from the hallways. They didn't think they'd find anything. First night that he aired the videos, he found that the shaman, the guy that kind of looked like a Viking, that the Capitol Police were walking him through, they found him, they walked him through the whole building, and they went to locked door after locked door trying to find an unlocked door into the Senate chamber, and they finally found one, and they led him right to that pool photographer that took the picture that was seen around the world and showed that the entire thing was a setup. And he was fired because he was exposing the J6 lie as we were entering the election season. You know all this is true. But like most liberals, you don't care about the truth.
Well, that's not true. I do care about the truth.
No,
multiple police officers died on that day. How could you swear that?
No, the only person... That's not true. That's not true. The only person that died at the Capitol on January 6th was Ashley Babbitt. No police officer died that day.
Well, they died later on.
If you have if you go to a concert, you've been to a concert?
Yeah.
How many people are at a concert in LA? How many people? 50,000, 20,000?
Yeah, a lot,
when you have a group that large, people that are at that concert you were at, a couple of them are going to die soon. That's just the way, when you have that, so those police officers that died, one of them had a heart attack, okay? They had nothing to do with January 6th. And the only person that died that day was Ashley Babbitt, who was shot dead by an incompetent Capitol Police lieutenant, and she was trying to stop people from advancing down that speaker's hallway. So no, police officers did not die on 9/11. I'm sorry, on January 6th.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
No, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Not one police. The only person that died on January 6th at the Capitol was Ashley Babbitt. You know that to be true, right?
Yeah, but
then why? If you know it to be true, why did you lie and say police officers died that day?
Because they died. Well, I meant
because they died later. I got news for you. We're all dying. Birth is a death sentence, right?
Well, I don't believe that. I think
you're going to live forever. You're an immortal. What are you, a Highlander from the Clan MacLeod?
No.
Okay, exactly. Oh my goodness. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yo, can you hear me?
Excuse me?
Hello.
Yeah, take care. All right. I would thank you for your call, but if I did that, I would be lying, and I don't want to lie to you or the audience. Let me take one or two more calls, and I got a lot more to cover. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from? There you go. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
You don't laugh for doing something the way you all do.
What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Alvin. I'm calling from Chicago. Why don't you guys laugh for doing something the way you do?
I can't understand what you said.
One lie after another.
I heard you say
you try to tell the world that they didn't see what they did see. You want to sit on here and tell us lie about it was true.
I don't understand what you're saying.
You know they wasn't.
I don't understand what you're saying.
I guess those were true as Nancy Lopez's death.
Thank you for. I can't get. Could you make sense of what he was saying? I couldn't understand anything. I heard he said he's Alvin from Chicago. And that's about it. Oh, my goodness. If you're on hold, hang in there. If you would like to call in, you can do that too at 1-888-465-2631. I want to share something that I saw today that was pretty twisted. And I'm going to share it with you in just a moment. But I want to take a quick break first, if you don't mind. I'm going to take a quick break. And then when we get back, I'll share this with you, all right? My name's Brian. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this. All right, we're back. All right, so I want to talk about this tragedy. If you're on hold, stand by. I want to talk about this tragedy in Minneapolis, which was god awful. But this mayor they've got out there is really a sad, sick person. I watched his speech he gave, which I'm going to play in a moment, at the first press conference earlier today. And it goes without saying that what happened in Minneapolis is a god-awful tragedy. Those poor children, too, have already sadly passed, and more could, hopefully not, but who knows how many others may pass, hopefully no one else. It's just a god-awful thing. And we found out that the shooter is transgender. The mayor comes out, this is a headline right now, Minneapolis Democrat mayor warns school massacre that killed 2 children is no excuse for transphobia. And of course, the guy hated Trump, the shooter, and he had terrible things about Trump written on his weapon. So here we have little children, babies. You know, as a parent, people are children until they're like 40, right, when you're a parent. But here we have babies whose lives were taken. And what's this guy doing? This insane mayor? He's doing a lot of terrible things. All of it's bad. He's out there becoming a transgender advocate. And really what he's doing is defending the monster who did this and acting as if the monster is the real victim. Here's his speech today. And, look at this guy. To me, and I'll just tell you a couple things. I saw this guy today, and it infuriated me. And you listen, you watch, and you may have seen it already, and you're welcome to call me and share your thoughts. But he looked like he got his hair done before he got there. He wanted to make sure he looked good on television. And I'll tell you, he also has a smirk on his face while he's speaking at the crime scene before the whole situation's even settled. And the smirk is he's enjoying being on television and he's in love with himself. And you'll see it on his face. He's kind of reminds me of, he's a mix between a couple of different types of people. He talks a lot like Tim Walz, who's a lunatic. But he reminds me of a mash between Joel Osteen and Beto. And both Osteen and Beto are both, Beto, whatever, are both in Texas. But it's like if you put together a mix of Joel Osteen and Beto, you'd get the mayor of Minneapolis. Listen to this guy who got his hair done, and you told me, does he not have a smirk on his face? Does this guy look like he's exploiting this tragedy? Do you see the smirk? Does he sound as if he's enjoying the fame and celebrity and being on television? Does he look like he's gotten his hair done? Maybe even some TV makeup on his cheeks? But it gets worse. You hear that? It's not about prayers. They were literally praying. So what is this guy saying? You know what it sounds like he's saying to me? It sounds to me like he's an atheist. And he's saying the prayer doesn't work. Look, they were praying when this happened. So he's saying the prayer doesn't work and the prayer is a waste of time. He sounds like an atheist. Isn't that how you took it? You know, when there's a tragedy like this, you don't, it's not political. Liberals make everything political. They talk about gun control. They talk about this. They talk about that. You know, there are already laws on the books to stop all these types of things. Murder is illegal everywhere in the United States. You know, and the reality of it is that criminals don't obey the laws, and you can have whatever laws you want on the books. The criminals don't obey the laws, so it doesn't matter what the laws are on the books because they don't obey them. But I took that as him saying that prayers don't work, that it's a waste of time because they were praying when this tragedy happened. Is that how you took it? My goodness. Now, this was another one. This is one of my least favorite people on Fox News. Trey Gowdy. I couldn't stand Trey Gowdy. I can't stand him now. He looks really weird now, too. And I don't like Trey Gowdy. When he was in Congress, he always talked the talk, but he always dropped the ball and never did anything. That Comer reminds me. I get upset with Comer because Comer's always talking the talk. He's always got the receipts, and then nothing comes of it after his TV. That's what Trey Gowdy used to be like, and he is a very weird dude. He's also a never Trumper. I was watching him on Fox from time to time during the campaign. He was always trashing Trump. This is Trey Gowdy today on Fox talking about what we need to do. Other than the one that there was, and he also left out that the shooter, like some of these other sad instances over the last few years, is a transgender shooter. I mean, so maybe the question is there something with the medications and things that they're taking that are causing these psychotic breaks? But this is a guy, listen, I know when these tragedies happen, there's always pundits on television talking about gun control. But Trey Gowdy was a Republican member of the United States House of Representatives, and he's talking about taking our guns away. Now, first off, I'll just say this about gun control. Those of you that are gun, I'm not an advocate and supporter of gun control, but those of you who are, I just will tell you this. If every American, every gun owner today agreed with Trey Gowdy that we're going to turn in all the guns, and everybody turned in their guns, and the guns that were possessed illegally by some miraculous event were also turned in, and there were all the guns that are in America today were gone, what would happen tomorrow? What do you think would happen tomorrow? Would we be a gun-free nation? 3D printing technology would be printing up unmarked guns all over the country if you took every gun out of America. That's right. And there's an old saying, if you outlaw guns, only outlaws will have guns. And that's a very true statement. And, I would never support gun control. Don't misunderstand me. Never would support with gun control. In fact, we have too much gun control already in this country, especially in the liberal cities. But one of the reasons there's so much crime in blue cities is because of gun control stops law-abiding citizens from having weapons. And if you notice, most of these tragic incidents, that they're in gun-free zones, churches and schools, gun-free zones. And the monsters know they're gun-free zones, and people are not there who can fight back. That's why they target gun-free zones. That is a fact. But to hear Trey Gowdy talk about that, my goodness, he's weird, and he's a jerk, and he is a hypocrite. I'm going to take a quick break, and if you're on hold, stand by. We've got more to share. Don't go anywhere. All right, welcome back to everyone. I'm Brian Craig. Thanks for tuning in. And don't forget, the Brian Craig Show podcast is available on all podcast platforms. In fact, you can go and relive the entire Trump campaign from the time he came down the escalator until today and do some binge watching. There's episodes even older than that. All right, let's go. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, my name is Jeffrey. I'm calling from Pennsylvania.
All right, Jeffrey in Pennsylvania. What's on your mind?
So I noticed that you had a couple of black guys that called in, and you hung up on them really quick, saying that you couldn't hear them or understand them. Is that just because you're like blatantly racist, or what's the deal there?
There was one gentleman who, I don't know, he may have been African American or not. Alvin from Chicago. Why do you think he was African American?
He called in and said, "I'm an African American from Chicago."
He said, "I'm Alvin." He said, "I'm Alvin." I thought he said, "I'm Alvin from Chicago." I couldn't understand what he was saying. He was not very articulate. He sounded like he was drunk or high or something. I couldn't understand what came out of his mouth.
So you could hear him.
I could hear him, but I couldn't understand the words that he was uttering. I could hear noise. I heard him say Alvin from Chicago, and I heard the name Trump, but the other words were unintelligible. I don't know if he was black, white, or Eskimo, but he...
What do you...
Yeah.
What do you think he was drinking?
I don't know. Beer,
like a Hennessy or something?
Weed, smoking weed, I don't know.
You think that's just what typically black people do on a Wednesday afternoon?
How do you know he's African American?
He said his name was Alvin. He said his name was Alvin. You and made up some story that he was drunk.
He said Alvin from Chicago. So I don't understand why you think he was black. You think black people are inarticulate? I don't understand. I'm confused.
You're the one saying that. No, you're the one who keeps saying that, my friend.
You're the
one who's saying that he was drunk on a Wednesday calling into a Trump show.
You can rewind the show and listen. I couldn't understand what he was saying. And I've got headphones on.
We did rewind the show, and he said, "Hey, I'm Black Alvin. I want to talk to you about
I didn't hear that.
Well, then you've got to... And then you said,
well, I
don't understand this, sir.
Okay, well, I could not understand the words coming out of his mouth. I'm sorry. I could understand a couple words.
Is that typically what happens when you hear a black person talking?
Well, I don't like to say this too often, but I know a lot of you are new to the program, and this might come as a shock to you.
Yes.
In fact, you might faint being a liberal lunatic. I'm a
conservative, by the way.
I know you're conservative. I know you're more conservative than me, right? Listen, I have one child.
I don't know about that. I don't have to tell 2028, friend.
I have one child who is African American. I'm a black parent.
So he's a half black child?
No, I have a black child. My daughter is black.
That would imply that you're black.
I'm a parent of a black child. That makes me a black parent. See, I told you, you almost fainted. Now you're incoherent. Hey, take care. Oh, my goodness. Now he needs a drink. I didn't fit the stereotype. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name's Stephanie.
All right. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Brian. This is Sean from Massachusetts.
Hey, Sean. What's up?
Well, looking at this, the shooting and everything that's happened today, of course, this pattern is all too familiar. And, it's almost like this woke cabal that we have trying to just manufacture these lunatics.
Now, hold on one second. Let me answer all these lines that are ringing. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Oh, no, lost you there. All right. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. And I just, it's unbelievable, just how often this happened. I was looking at the images of the manifesto and the things that this person had left prior to doing this, and all too often the signs get ignored, and it's disgusting what he was putting on his gun paraphernalia. The messages he was saying, horrible, evil things about saying death to Donald Trump. He wants to shoot him, and all these things about faith, mocking faith. And there's a whole bunch of them.
Well, the thing about it is, we're going to get more information as it comes out. But it seems to me the parents got a lot of responsibility here. I mean, when you're a parent and you have a kid that's not stable, you can't let them carry on like that. You have even if they're over 18, you've got some responsibility as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's disgusting. There definitely has to be some responsibility taken. And I was looking at the background of this person from what we've known, and it's disturbing, very, very disturbing. This one here, it seems like this one here feels more than usual.
Well, Kash Patel said that they're investigating this as a hate crime against Catholics.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I got to tell you, it was like in Nashville, it was targeted because of the religion, in my opinion, by a lunatic. You know, listen, this is the thing. Most people that commit violent and deadly crimes are mentally ill, because sane people don't do that. That doesn't mean that there's not some incident where somebody cracks or snaps or something, but when someone does something like this, there's always mental. And you know, liberals, you know, Rush used to talk about this a lot. Rush Limbaugh. Liberals have this attitude. This is what Rush would say. They have this attitude that if we would just do whatever it is they wanted us to do about everything, whether it's gun control, this or that, you can list all the issues, that this would be a utopian society where everything was perfect. And that's just not the way it is. You can't make sense of lunacy, of insanity. And no laws or regulations that you pass are going to stop insane people from doing god-awful insane things.
It's absolutely, Rush was well ahead of the curve. You could see he had content of the yin yang way before, and the guy was just amazing. But he was seeing everything way before it happened, and that guy was amazing. The thing is that he's right.
Yeah, Rush is right, and Rush is missed. All right, I appreciate the call. You know, it seems like Democrats have this mortgage fraud thing going on, right? I mean, we've got Adam Schiff with a mortgage fraud case, Letitia James with a mortgage fraud case, and this lady on the Fed board with a mortgage fraud case. This seems to be one of the organized criminal things that Democrats do. And I saw this. I saw Paul Krugman, jerk, used to be with the New York Times, and he was on CNN today. Listen to this. He's talking about the Fed chair and the mortgage fraud, okay? He's comparing federal mortgage fraud to cheating on a third-grade exam. This woman is on the Fed board. Mortgage fraud is a federal crime that's done through federal financial institutions. So how can you be under investigation for suspicion of committing federal financial crimes and be on the Fed board? It's not the same as cheating off of someone's third-grade spelling test next to you, all right? My goodness. Oh, man. My name's Brian Craig. This is where MAGA comes to talk. And if you'd like to support my channel, become a Patreon supporter. If you become a Patreon supporter, of course, you're supporting my content. But you also get access to commercial-free editions to all of my podcast episodes, like this one, okay? Also, you get access to a lot of exclusive content that I post nowhere else, right there on my Patreon page. There's a link to my Patreon page in the description of the video. The direct website address is patreon.com/RealBrianCraigShow. If you become a top Patreon supporter, you get your name on the screen here on YouTube, and you get a thank you shout out on every podcast episode. So the names you will hear now are my top Patreon supporters. I want to thank SFjr, Christine, ETW, Chuck, Pamela, Nick, Wesley, Doris, Heather, David, Maria in Texas, Alice, LeeZep, Shawna, George, Brandon, John, Frank, Dale, Tina, David, Laura, Rob, Wes, Sue, and Janice. These are my top Patreon supporters. Thank you all. And again, there's a link to my Patreon page in the description of the episode on whatever platform you're listening on, or just go to patreon.com/Real Brian Craig Show. Let's go back to the phones. You're on the air. What's your name? Where you're calling from? You're on the air.
Brian Rivera from.
Turn down the volume in the background of whatever device you're listening to me on, please.
Hey, sorry about that. John from Ohio. Just wanted to push on. I talked about something that you had mentioned there, the idea that this was a targeted attack against Catholics, and you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, Christianity is attacked in this country. It's one of the religions that they're allowed to pick on. Unfortunately, you look at other religions, and they're the untouchable religions like Islam. They're not allowed to say anything about that religion. You know, they call Christians crazy. Our beliefs are attacked, whether it's abortion, marriage, and you can't talk about those things.
Well, you know, this thing, this is the thing, okay? You know, I'm Catholic, Christian. I've been Christian my whole life. I've been a Catholic for about 10 or 15 years. Here's the thing, okay? The left have demonized Christians as being homophobe, transphobes, and all these things that they're not. Now, that doesn't mean that Christians, by the way, Catholics are not a denomination of Christianity, okay? Protestants have denominations. Catholics, we're just the church. We're Christians, okay? It's not a denomination like Baptist or something. But they have created this stereotype that Christians are against them. That's not true. Christians love and embrace all people, and if they're good Christians, including sinners, right? Jesus himself associated with sinners. So we're not transphobe, anti-gay, or any of these things, but people who are in those types of lifestyles think that Christians hate them and are out to get them and destroy them. And the left promote this negative stereotype about Christians, and that's what results in things like this tragedy.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's the truth. And I was watching MSNBC, and they had touched upon the subject of the shooter, and they were blaming video games and all this. And the same media that pushed the vax, you know, they're out there, and they will not admit that the medication that we're putting our children and young adults on is causing.
Well, I don't know, but I know this, okay? You know, I've been talking about this a lot because I get calls from a lot of people from all different backgrounds on the program here, and when I hear from young men that are Gen Z, a lot of them are so unhinged. And I was talking, and you hear me talk sometimes, when they talk to me on the phone, one of the reasons they're so unhinged is they're immersed in a really hermit-like existence where all their communication is through DMs and text messages, and they don't have phone conversations with people, so they don't know proper phone etiquette. There's something to be said about video. Sadly, video games are now, you know, I've got a Miss Pac-Man arcade machine in my house because I grew up on that. I love Pac-Man, but Miss Pac-Man's my favorite, and in my kitchen, I have a Miss Pac-Man arcade machine, and it's a lot of fun. But now
very different from Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, exactly. But most video games now, most of them are first-person shooters, and because I'm not blaming this for the tragedy of today at all. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, you have a generation, maybe older millennials and Gen Z, who have no interaction with humans. Many of them even work at home, or maybe they're door dashing. They don't even see people. They just drop stuff off at and they play these first-person shooters, and people aren't real to them. That's why some of them talk to me in such crazy, vile ways. They don't see people as other as other persons. They live in this very secluded hermit existence. And there is some truth, I think, that the first-person shooter video games and the lack of personal interaction between that generation does cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, I think if someone's mentally ill, that would not help
Correct.
them. I think what we need to address is the medication that a lot of these shooters tend to be on. They take these individuals who are sick and need help, and they put them on antidepressants, which leads to their thoughts.
Or they put them on gender-affirming medications that affect their
and that
hormones,
too,
which
with
affect
this
mood.
shooter.
Mm-hmm.
with this shooter that's coming out, the information, they're putting these people who need help. And they're, if someone identifies a certain way, they should get them the help, not just put them on a medication and push them out there into the public. They need to get them real help.
You know,
and
Medicaid,
they're ignoring
right.
that.
Yeah, hey, listen, I appreciate the call. All right, take care. You make some good points. All medications have side effects, and the only medication I'm on, I take an allergy medication because I'm allergic to cats, and I have 4 cats. And I was off allergy medication for a while, okay? And I went back on it recently, and you probably can tell the difference. I'm not, I was having a lot of nasal problems. I couldn't breathe and things when I'm on the air. And I was on one medication that was making me feel kind of sad and depressed, so I stopped taking it. A while back I had, I don't have this anymore, but I had high blood pressure. And I was taking high blood pressure medication. And I was having a hard time reading, and I do a lot of reading for this job because it was affecting the blood vessels in my eyes. So I stopped taking it. I lost weight. I don't need the blood pressure medication. All medications have side effects, and a lot of those side effects are very negative and affect mood. So I agree. The only medication I take is a non-prescription, over-the-counter allergy medication. And I do not take any, I talk about Dr. Appleton. There's no medications, no shots, no injections. I'm on the Coastal Weight Loss Secret. There's no medications, no prescription medications, no shots or anything else. I don't take any medications unless I absolutely have to, like this allergy medication, but that's even over the counter. And I went through a lot of different allergy medications because of side effects. Some of them just made me tired, and I have crazy hours, so I need to be awake. Or one was affecting my mood, making me feel sad, a little depressed. Stop taking that one. That's the way it works, right? And different medications, some people have no side effects or different side effects than another person. So yeah, there's truth into all of what the caller said and also what I said. If you're new to the program, welcome. Make sure that you subscribe. This obviously is where MAGA comes to talk. The Brian Craig Show podcast is available on all podcast platforms, so you can listen in your car, on your Bluetooth, on any podcast platform. If you want to catch the podcast live, look me up on YouTube and subscribe there, Brian Craig Show on YouTube. And if you follow me on YouTube, you catch the podcast live, but also my morning show live. And you can call me there at 888-465-2631 when I'm live, like I'm live right now on YouTube. I'm going to go against my better judgment and take another call or two before I say goodbye. Usually when I do that, the calls are awful and I should have just ended, but we'll find out. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Howdy. My name's Jack. I'm from Minnesota.
Okay. What's up?
Howdy. I just wanted to ask you what you thought about that vote that got put through just on July 22nd to have the Epstein files released, but every single Republican in the House voted against it.
I don't think about it at all.
Why don't you?
Because it's old news that's not relevant to me. All right, see what I mean? You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Brian, it's Jack from Sarasota. How are
hey,
you
Jack.
today,
I'm sorry. I'm out of time. All right, take care. All right, it's the Brian Craig Show where MAGA comes to talk. I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.